Thank you, Senator Poirier. Senator Duffy.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And Minister, again, thanks for being here. In your opening remarks, you referred to new tools to conserve and protect important species and ecosystems. How would that apply, for example, in the case of northern pulp in Pictou County, Nova Scotia? As I'm sure you know, Northern Pulp plans to dump over 80 million liters of undefined effluent daily into the waters of Northumberland Strait, which are fished by fishers from Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island. How would this change that you're putting in protect those waters from that kind of a proposed project?
So I guess a couple things. I mean, the first is when I refer to tools, I was referring more specifically to things like stock rebuilding plans and those kinds of things. But to your question around Northern Pulp, under the existing Fisheries Act and under the new Fisheries Act, there obviously is a requirement not to disturb fish and fish habitat, or that there's a requirement that if there is going to be disturbance, that it be mitigated and ultimately offset. Northern Pulp is a project that, as I understand it at the present time, is going through a provincial environmental assessment, and there certainly has been a request from a number of different groups for a federal environmental assessment. If there was to be a federal environmental assessment, which is the decision of the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change, then Fisheries and Oceans would be absolutely directly involved in providing advice, scientific advice, with respect to the potential impacts on fish and fish habitat. And I guess the other piece of it is there is a marine refuge in that area, and so Fisheries and Oceans has to opine on whether or not there's any impact on the marine refuge. I would say, though, that in terms of pulp and paper effluent, I mean, there are other pulp and paper facilities that meet the pulp and paper effluent standards that are held by Environment Canada but are authorized under the Fisheries Act and that discharge into an ocean environment. And so the issue, as I've talked to many of the groups who are concerned about this, that I've said to them is it's really about differences in the receiving environment and being able to demonstrate that there are scientific impacts in that particular receiving environment relating to, for example, lobster larvae, which seems to be one of the big issues. That is a conversation that's ongoing, and the Minister of Environment and Climate Change still has to make that determination. We are certainly, though, providing scientific information to the province as well.
I think many people in our region would be surprised to hear that the Department of Fisheries, which has been around for 100 years and has been looked to by people throughout the region for leadership on the fishery, that you would be taking a back seat to the Environment Department?
No, I'm not sure that's what I said. What I said was that we actually provide all of the scientific information relating to fish and fish habitat to the Department of Environment, which has the formal responsibility to do environmental assessments. And that's how it works. But all of the issues relating to fish and fish habitat fall with us. That is true for pulp and paper regulations. That is true for metal mine effluent regulations. That is true for wastewater related effluents. There are standards that are developed and applied, and the science behind the impacts on fish and fish habitat reside with us.
Do you feel their pain, their anxiety?
I definitely feel their anxiety. Before I was the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans, I was the Parliamentary Secretary for Environment and Climate Change. So I've seen this discussion, and I've actually had conversations with the same groups in two different hats. I feel their concern, and I think that it's very much important that we are able to demonstrate from a scientific perspective that either there are specific concerns that should be addressed in a thoughtful way, or that the science tells us that this is not a significant issue, and we need to make sure that we're doing the work to engage those conversations and we're transparent about it.
Thank you very much.
Senator Duffy. Senator McGuinness.